What's up, everybody? This is David Jagneaux, aka the Jaggernaut, and today I want to talk to you about Neverwinter Nights 2 Enhanced Edition. This game just came out this week for PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. I was lucky enough to get an early access copy for PS5 to check out before release and see how the game runs and fares and if it's worth playing. As always, these are my raw, unscripted thoughts. I am not preparing my review written out. I'm not reading from anything. This is just purely what I actually think about the game. I wrote up my review over on Forbes, so you can read that in its entirety if you would like a little bit more detail on all my thoughts. But suffice it to say that if you have not played Neverwinter Nights 2, I definitely think the Enhanced Edition is the way to go. If you have played this game already, and you already have it running well on your PC via whatever mods you've used, and you have the GOG version or what may have you, I don't know if this is necessarily worth picking up if you're going to be intending to play it on PC anyway, just because the Enhanced Edition doesn't have a ton of new features or enhancements, really, despite the title. It's mostly just support. It runs a lot better. The UI is better. The camera is a little bit better, and if you're playing off of PC, then this is probably the way to go just because it's the first time the game's ever came to consoles. And if you intend to play on Steam Deck, this version is definitely going to be easier to set up and run because you literally just download it from Steam and play the game. It is Steam Deck verified. I've heard it runs very well. I'm playing on PS5. I played on PS5 and on PS Portal, and I gotta say that it fits the handheld playstyle so perfectly. So if you're intending to play on Switch or Steam Deck or Portal, it's really such a great experience because the game lends itself very well to that style of play. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into more of the details of Neverwinter Nights 2. If you're not familiar, this game was originally developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Atari 19 years ago, but now it's being brought over in the enhanced edition via Aspyr. So they are bringing the game over, essentially porting it, just like they've done with Tomb Raider Remastered, Legacy of Kain Remastered, and various different Star Wars games in recent years. This is, for lack of a better term, a port. Like I said, it's not a full remaster, it's not a remake or anything like that. This is essentially the same game people played back in the day. It just runs better on modern hardware and is finally playable on console. The combat is a real time with pause, so it's not fully real time like something like Dungeon Siege or Diablo, but it's not fully turn based like Baldur's Gate 3 or Divinity Original Sin. This is combat that happens automatically in real time with dice rolls happening behind the scenes, but you can pause it at any time to issue commands. So that's essentially how combat works. Very similar to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Icewind Dale 1 and 2, Dragon Age Origins, even. A lot of those games have a similar combat style. So I've never played the game itself, really. I did try to play it back in the day whenever I, first booted the game up back in college a long time ago, over a decade ago, and it just didn't work on my computer. So I never really bothered to try much more. And that's the kind of stuff that this enhanced edition is essentially trying to fix. If you are going to get it on PC, the other nice thing is the enhanced edition fully revives the multiplayer and is fully compatible with all of the mods that existed previously. The multiplayer is also cross-platform, which is kind of impressive and cool. So people on PlayStation, Switch, Xbox, PC can all play together, which I think is really neat. I didn't get to try out any of that stuff because I was playing before the game came out on PS5. So I really just had, the base game and its campaigns to play. So I did not get to finish the campaigns whenever I was in the review period. I just didn't have enough time, and I figure it wasn't super important for a game like this because it has been out for so long. But what I did play, the base original campaign, which I believe was called The Wailing Death, is extremely good. I've heard it has a bit of a weak ending, but then the first module they released after release, the Mask of the Betrayer expansion, I've heard is fantastic and really kind of connects to the main campaign and then goes kind of above and beyond into the realms that D&D stories rarely get to go to, where it's, characters that are level 20 plus, godlike beings going to different planes of existence. This it's a story that really goes to some crazy places. And I've heard it's an amazing, amazing RPG, an amazing story. The third campaign that you can play that's included in this enhanced edition is the Storm of Zahir. That one you get to make your own custom party if you'd like. So it's very standalone. It's a separate thing. It's more condensed compared to the main campaign. And then there's the Mysteries of Westgate, which I've heard is the weakest. It was made by a different studio actually. But there's a lot of content here. It's like over 100 hours of content, easy, even if you don't re-roll and make multiple characters. Just to get through all four, you're probably looking at around 100 hours, more or less, especially if you're not going to be using guides and build guides and things like that. This is a Dungeons and Dragons game, so it is based on 3.5 edition, not 5th edition like Baldur's Gate 3. The main difference that you need to know with that regard is that 3.5 is a lot more nuanced and complex. There's a ton more variety and, like I said, nuance of how you build out your characters and things like that. They have streamlined quite a bit though, because they have things called packages so that you can choose a package for your class that adheres to a certain play style that you want to achieve later on in the game. So for example, if you pick a paladin, there's all these different variances and nuances of how the paladin is structured and built, and which gods they worship, and all their different subtleties. And the same goes for all the other classes. And so the packages streamline things a little bit, make it a little bit more accessible and easier to navigate and understand. As someone that is not super familiar with 3.5, I mostly know 5th edition from playing tabletop over the last decade or so, and also just from playing games like Baldur's Gate 3. So 3.5, there's some weirdness to it that I don't fully know off the bat. So I did choose to use the package with my character. And I think that made things a little bit easier, and you kind of go faster in creation. You can also auto level. So that's a thing. Whenever your character levels up, whether it's your character or whether it's a companion, you can choose to auto recommend the level up process, which is kind of nice. If you're someone that's mostly in it for the story and the gameplay and doesn't care too much about, the nitty gritty details of which stat levels up and which feat you take when, maybe consider doing that, because I would assume it's not going to completely handicap you. You're probably going to end up with a pretty good character by the end of the thing. I think one of the things that this game does incredibly well, and it is expected for an Obsidian game, is that the writing is just exquisite. All the characters and companions are fantastic. Lots of nuance in their personalities and motivations. They're very believably written. They feel like, real characters come to life off the screen. It's not, these one dimensional sort of puppets and caricatures of different archetypes that you would expect to see. They all have so much depth and complexity. And I really found myself interested in their backstories and helping them, achieve their goals and figuring out how they can fit into the puzzle pieces of my character's life. It's something that Obsidian and the people at that studio have always done well. A lot of these people date back to working on the original Fallout games at Interplay, and then, going on to do New Vegas and KOTOR 2, and Avowed most recently, games like Alpha Protocol, Dungeon Siege 3, Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, Tyranny. These are all games that Obsidian has either worked on or their DNA is in. And a lot of them are renowned for their writing and characters. And so Neverwinter Nights 2 is not an exception to that, which I think is a testament to the quality of that studio and their hiring processes, and just the freedom and creativity they allow their writers to have, I think is, really strong. One of the biggest questions with this enhanced edition that I think a lot of people probably have is, what did it fix? My understanding is that a lot of bugs and performance and crash related issues were fixed. I personally did not experience a single crash, and I played for over 20 hours before, assessing the game for myself. I maybe had a couple bugs here and there, like getting stuck on some level geometry, characters disappearing during dialogue occasionally, just small things like that, but nothing game breaking. I didn't run into any major issues. I've heard horror stories about people trying to get this game to run on PS5. It ran great. I didn't have a single problem. Frame rate was steady. It looks really good at high resolutions now. I don't think it has any new character models or anything like that for the enhanced edition, but things just look better at higher resolutions now because they have, sort of improved the game and how it runs, which is really nice. Overall, this really is a game that I can recommend without reservation. I mean, if you're into really intricate, detailed RPGs with a lot of customization, a lot of branching dialogue and choice and consequence related themes and characters that are interesting and combat that's not boring, that's very tactical, and a lot of strategy involved. This is a game that I would recommend checking out. That if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. Like I said, I'm not well versed in the original. I'm not an expert by any means, but I have checked it out on PS5 and I really do enjoy what I played. I think they did a great job of porting it over to console, getting it running on modern computers. All those things seem to be working well. I would love to check out the multiplayer at some point. Don't know if mods work on consoles, if there's ever going to be a way to support that. I feel like the answer is probably no. But even just on those 4 base campaigns, there's so much content there to check out. So definitely consider giving this game a go. It's only around 30 bucks, which is a great deal considering the quality and quantity of content you get here. So let me know if you have any questions, like I said, and I'll leave a link to my full review over at Forbes as well, which does go into a little bit more detail in some of the other aspects of the game. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, drop a comment, hit that subscribe, and I will see you again next time.